Week 16 is underway. Your playoff semi-finals are hopefully heading in the right direction. But as always, with injuries all throughout the league, I think I've never seen quite so many players registered out on Sleeper as I have this week. We have some streaming options for you. So over to you, Ed.
Yeah, first up in our quarterback selection, I feel like we've spoken about nothing else for the last few weeks, but JJ McCarthy, amazingly, he's still only 30% rostered and started in just 13% of leagues, despite a QB 10 week followed by a QB 7 week. Plus, on paper, things look to get even better as he has the Giants this week, who are giving up the second most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks, and then the Lions next week in Championship Week, who have struggled against quarterbacks of late, conceding the third most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks over the last 4 years. So it's likely JJ McCarthy is available in your league. Go and get him if you need him. Even if you've had a quarterback you've been relying on or has done you well over the season, McCarthy could do you a better job. Aaron Rodgers, QB 18, probably slightly better than was expected, to be honest. He has only had 3 QB 1 weeks across the season. One of them was quite recently against the Ravens a couple of weeks ago. He has the Lions this week, who, as we have established, are giving up big points across the board of late. I fully expect the Steelers to put in a strong performance on both sides of the ball this week. So I think Rodgers could be a canny pickup. Finally, Quinn Ewers, bit of a wild card, just 4% rostered, more of a punt, but you may be in need in a super flex or a deeper league due to the injuries. We don't know what to expect from the rookie, but you couldn't ask for a much easier matchup on paper. The Bengals have improved on defense. I mean, that wasn't very difficult. They've gone from catastrophic to just really bad. But they've still given up the third most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. I think the question is, Ewers auditioning for a starting spot. It does look conceivable that the Dolphins might be willing to take the enormous dead cap hit that moving on from Tua would involve. So it's a big game for Ewers. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him, rack up a decent score.
There's a really good chance that you could be a strong favourite for the championship in your redraft league and need a QB this week because Patrick Mahomes has been brilliant for fantasy all year. There's a good chance he could have got you to the playoffs. And now you're scrambling around trying to find. So this is where our strategy of only kind of holding one QB in redraft can sometimes backfire if you've not got that reserve on the bench. Lots of people, though, us included, have been streaming tight ends throughout the season. So if you are in that situation, we've got some options for you here. We've mentioned him umpteen shows in a row for our American viewers. Umpteen is British for loads. And we've got Darren Waller, only 48% rostered. Looking at some of these percentages, especially for Colby Parkinson and Waller, and I suppose McCarthy on the previous page as well, it shows how many people are just a little bit lazy this time of year of going to make their waiver pickups early, or what bargains are to be had because people aren't in contention, just aren't bothering with waivers maybe. That's probably more, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
but
it.
Waller has got the Bengals. We've said it all on the main show. He had a mega week last week, and he gets the worst defense to fancy tight ends this week, even with being bit improved. I'm not going to say much improved, a bit improved. They're still giving up the most by far. Yes, there's QB uncertainty. You've just mentioned Ewers, but a rookie QB's best friend, Ed, is
his tight end.
And Waller is the most dependable target in that offense, really, at this point in time. So there's a bit more risk. It's weird, isn't it, that Tua's been benched. There's a bit more risk to Waller, but I still see he's going to perhaps get enough done. The next man up there, Colby Parks, is probably, with the announcement of that benching, overtaken Waller as one of the tight end favourites on waivers this week. He's absolutely been a hot pickup. You've mentioned him in a couple of shows in waiver pickups as well. And he's been steady targets-wise, hitting 7 targets last week. And with Devontae Adams being out, he should see, I'd say, at least 7 again this week and has a route to good value. The Seahawks, I think we just assume they've been constantly good on defense, various points, but they're actually giving up the 6th most fantasy points per game to tight ends as well. So that could be an interesting selection. Finally, This represents the riskier of the three, but is very widely available, which because beggars cannot always be choosers. Gesicki against the Dolphins. The Bengals offense in general is a bit of a risk. So we could do a whole feat many shows have this week about Joe Burrow seeming like he's in a bit of a trough at the moment. But he does attract targets. The Dolphins are the third worst defense against fancy tight ends. So if you are in need or you're not happy with your current tight end, Gesicki, this could be one of his few weeks he's had over the course of the year. Obviously, having closer eyes on the Bengals week in, week out, Ed, would you be playing Gesicki if you were looking for a tight end on waivers?
No, I'm going to mention the Bengals offense when I talk about the Dolphins defense shortly, but it's worrying that the Bengals it just seems quite toxic, the whole atmosphere at the moment. And Burrow, there's a lot of talk about Burrow, but yeah, he doesn't look happy at the moment. So yeah, I'd be wary of playing Gesicki, but as you say, widely available and he does attract targets.
Must be really hard going to work when you're getting paid 50 million a year, mustn't it?
Yes,
really tricky.
Yeah.
Right. As always, we know that the best option for our defense is to stream them. So if you are looking for those marginal gains in your playoff games, who should we be looking at this week?
Yeah, I mean, there are, obviously a few defenses available, some more highly rostered than others. The Vikings, the most highly rostered, their defense 11. Now, they've been hit and miss. I mean, I feel like I've recommended them before, mainly on miss weeks, but I'll give it another go. I mean, they stifled Dak in real life last week, but it yielded only 2 fantasy points for their defense. But they get another go against a Giants offense who are struggling to pick up big points of late. The Vikings can explode. They did it against the Bengals earlier on in the season, and they proved that as well against the Commanders a couple of weeks ago. So if they're available, I think they could be a decent pickup. As we've just discussed, the Dolphins. Now, they're in the middle of the pack, and they've struggled to pick up big points, but they have the Bengals. And as I said, I just think the whole atmosphere surrounding Burrow and the Bengals is just pretty toxic. It doesn't feel good at the moment. I mean, there's a lot of talk about, Burrow retiring or leaving the Bengals. I don't think that's going to happen. But he just doesn't look like he's happy, and he's almost admitted as much. And I've never seen him struggle as much as he did against the Ravens last week. It didn't help that the O-line, who've been better this season, were almost non-existent. I just feel there's a bit of a chance for the Dolphins to kick a man while he's down. So the Dolphins might be worth looking at. And the Titans, even more left field pick. It's just purely based on the QB that they're playing, as they've got the Chiefs, who of course have lost Mahomes, and it's time for some Minshew magic, or maybe not. I see him as kind of like Jameis Winston light, just not quite as exciting, but he's almost guaranteed to throw a pick or two. And I just think it's going to be hard for a franchise like the Chiefs, who are so used to success, to get themselves up for these meaningless matches. I mean, maybe I'm doing Andy Reid and the Chiefs a disservice, but I can see this being a very flat performance, and I just feel like the Titans' defense could quite easily take advantage. So maybe the Titans might be a decent left field pickup this week.
A favourite thing of ours when we're looking at the stats is where we look at how efficient players can be, where you've got perhaps minimal targets and you've got maximum yardage and touchdowns off them. Gardner Minshew had the exact opposite of that with his players. So I'm just looking at the stats up now. So he completed 3 of 5 passes for 22 yards, no touchdowns, an interception.
Efficient.
Yeah, very, very inefficient. Moving on then, we want to have a look at some DFS this week. So if you are out of your contention in your main fantasy leagues and you want to play some DFS, our stack of the week this week, Ed, every so often this happens where we produce our notes independently and on the exact same logical outcome. That usually signals steer clear. I don't see that being the case this week.
I just think Herbert, McConkey are just great value this week, especially McConkey. I mean, Herbert, the 8th most expensive quarterback, and McConkey is the 21st most expensive wide receiver. Leaves you a good chunk of money for the rest of your team. they've got the Cowboys. we always talk about who has the Cowboys. They are giving up the most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks and wide receivers. So it just seems like a bit of a no-brainer.
Yeah, it's absolutely going to be widely selected. But as we said, if you put in a few lineups in, sometimes you have to go with the obvious pick because sometimes the obvious pick is obvious for very, very, very good reason. It certainly is here. McConkey's not been as consistent as we had hoped he would be this year. That's why he's got that value. But I do think that the risk is baked into the cost, isn't it? You don't need them to have massive numbers to pay off while you've got money to pay off elsewhere. But there is a route that is just such a mega return on what you've spent. And that's good value on both formats, Fantasy Game Day and Draft Kings. If you are playing DFS over here in the UK and you've not played on Fantasy Game Day yet, play this week using promo code THFF1 for one free play for your first paid entry. Great selection of games, including the main slate and then also the Triple Crown Pick'ems game. If you're playing standard DFS, you might want to be saving a little bit, though, to go for some of those bigger names. And usually, Ed, I look at the bargain basket, I go for an absolute rock bottom price for a wide receiver, a tight end, or a running back. Instead, I've just gone low cost for a quarterback. So Kirk Cousins, the 17th most expensive quarterback. The reason I've gone for him, two reasons. It's what he did last week and the matchup this week. So Cardinals are averaging approximately 20 fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. So that is 19.46, the fifth most in the league. Cousins looked comfortable last week, to be fair to him. 30 completions, 373 yards, 3 touchdowns. I just think it looks like this could be, once again, is it going to be the best combination? No. But for the value of putting Kirk Cousins in, it gives you that money to spend up elsewhere. One quick note. They're also giving up, at the Cardinals, the 4th most fantasy points per game to running backs. Bijan, Cousins, I don't think that is as ridiculous as it might initially sound, wanting to stack someone with Cousins this week. Bijan is obviously the most expensive player to play. If you can twin that with a little bit of stack value with a low-cost quarterback, it could give you a bit of room for maneuver elsewhere. Would you follow the glory of last week? Would you be looking at pairing Pitts with Cousins? Or is that it for Kyle Pitts the next 3 years?
I was just thinking a Cousins Pitts stack, but as you said, we've learned not to trust in Kyle Pitts. So I'd imagine he's on for about, 2.3 fantasy points this week.
That would be very Kyle Pittsy, wouldn't it? Started in 85% of leagues, scores 3 points.
Yes.
That is our rundown through some streaming options in DFS this week for week 16. But Ed, I thought we would also have a quick mention to the TH Fantasy Football Best Ball Bonanza. Congratulations to our final 8, Hudson Cullen. Now, we've mentioned Hudson a few times. The reason being, he is the son of Matt Cullen of JTT Cup organizational fame, Fantasy Best Ball royalty here in the UK. Matt is not in the finals of the JTT Cup. He is not in the semi-finals of the TH Fantasy West Bonanza, but Hudson is.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, no disrespect to anybody else on there. We want Hudson to win now.
We would. I'd love him to get that ring, yeah.
So, Hudson, if you are watching, we are rooting for you to bring some glory to the Cullen household. Let's shout out HMS Rookie as well, Wardy145, Matty B4949, Paolo2576, Alex Obro, who has been towards the top of the leaderboard overall throughout this season as well. GTW, GTC, that's a good teams win, great teams cover team. So once again, a team that we love to get on our show when we need someone to cover our lack of knowledge in betting. So it's nice to see them involved. And we mentioned a few times about A-Bolts91, who does pretty much everything we organise, Fantasy Football Wise and Sleeper. So it's nice to see him having some success as well. Finally, Ed, though, a quick shout out to Gradient97. So we decided this year that from here on in, we will keep our scoring and roster the exact same TH Fantasy Football Best Bonanza each year, so we can track our all-time top scores. We've only got 2 entries in the top 10 so far this year, but I mentioned to Gradient 97 because his week 15 score is our 6th highest over the last 2 years, and his second entry is now the only person with 2 entries from 2 separate years. I'm sure he will have his eye on an entry into that top 10 in 2026 as well. As always, a massive thank you to everybody who's been involved. We will publish our final amount raised in the next couple of weeks. We run our fundraising year through the calendar year, and hopefully we'll find time in the off season to maybe put something out via the Beast and Memory Cafe, who we raise money for as well, just to show where that money's going and what a great little charity it is. Anything you want to add for week 16, Ed, before we make a move?
No. Just enjoy the football while it lasts, guys.
Yep, savor. We've got a couple more red zones to go before we're into less football, but really high stakes football, which obviously it's an even balance, isn't it? Getting to enjoy all of the games in full. But yeah, that is us for week 16. We'll put a couple more shorts over the weekend. But for now, ta-ta and farewell. Malcolm, take us home.
You have been listening to the team from TH Fantasy Football. For more content, follow TH_fantasy_NFL on Twitter and Instagram.